Well, welcome everybody. I'm going to go ahead and open up our second budget workshop for North Topsail Beach. Today is Wednesday, April 19th, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Darian and also to Ms. Elliott. I'm not sure who's starting the slides.
I'll start off and then eventually turn it over to Caitlin. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mayor. Just one point before we do get started. As you'll notice, we don't have a town clerk present at today's meeting, so please make sure when you speak, you have your microphone on and you're talking into the microphone, because we'll be relying on these recordings to capture the minutes. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, Ricky, first slide, please. The draft budget we're presenting today has been amended since our first budget workshop in March, which includes recommended employee package cost. Noteworthy changes include the updated salary figures. Since the last meeting, we included in this package a proposed 6% increase to salaries across all departments, which is comprised of a 4% COLA and a 2% merit. So that's 4% for a cost of living adjustment and 2% potential for a merit increase. In an effort to enhance the employee benefits package, in addition to the recommended increase, we've included short-term disability coverage for employees, and increase the HRA from $1,000 to $1,500 per employee, with the intention to open the availability to the HRA for employees to use for dependents. So right now it's used solely for employees only, so we would be opening that up to their dependents and family members. Also included will be 2 floating holidays that will be used in the fiscal year to be used or lose, so they won't accrue, but 2 to be used. Do I need to pause?
Connie had to take a call.
I think we can keep going. She stepped outside.
We've not received the cost of the increase for the insurance from a provider yet. However, we have included a 5% increase in cost for the coverage. We did want to plug a number in here. Historically, we've seen a 2 to 3% increase, so we included a conservative 5% increase for budgetary purposes. The North Carolina League of Cities has yet to release their salary survey results for comparison. We were hoping to have those by now, but we don't expect them now to be coming in till the end of April. So the difference of this proposed package is $100,000.
You're taking questions as we go through.
Why don't we, since we don't have a clerk today, why don't we hold questions till Alice gets done? I'm making some notes here, and I think that might be easier when it comes to translating the tape.
I agree.
Okay, just to continue on with the talking about salary increases. It's my understanding that Onslow County is hoping to propose a 1 to 2% max increase for staff. We talked about that at the last meeting. I haven't heard any further updates on that, so that is still my understanding at this point. Holly Ridge is looking towards a 5 to 6% increase across departments. Topsail's looking at 5% for staff other than police. They recently approved an increase for police before approving their budget, so they've already implemented an increase for their police department staff. Surf City followed suit after Topsail and is looking at a 3 to 3.5% increase for staff other than police. So they've already went ahead and increased police, from my understanding, and looking right now, landing on what they think is a 3 to 3.5% increase for all other staff. What I propose is a package that is equal across departments. Do you want to pause here for questions on
let's
anything
pause.
to this point?
Yep.
Oh, I thought we were waiting to the very end.
No. I'm good.
That ain't gonna work. Go ahead.
I'm good per slide, but I just have a couple real quick, and I may be covering some of yours. So Alice, I appreciate you doing all the follow-up that you did with our staff as well as other nearby towns on the increase. So it sounds like you guys are comfortable with the 6%. For the HRA, were we utilize, it's good that are reaching it out to the families. Mm-hmm. I was just wondering if we were taking full advantage of having it previously.
Historically, they were not. Last year, we made an effort to remind employees that it's available and encourage them to use it. So we saw a significant increase this past year. So we were about 90% of employees, I think, used it.
Good.
To this point. So I think they're more aware of it and
Okay.
they're using it at this point. So that's why we thought that perhaps now that would be a good benefit to, as part of the package, to increase that. There was not, I know we and it had some initial conversations about different incentives, such as looking at, through Cigna, having like an employee health fair to have like screenings available to employees, but talking to department heads, a lot of them go through that, specifically fire. I know they already go through with, with health checks and everything as well. So it just really didn't, it really didn't make sense and wouldn't be seen as an added benefit. So we tried to put in what we thought that would be of the best benefit to the employees
Perfect. Okay.
with what would be used.
Alderman Grant, did you have a question?
A couple of them. You said 5% increase in insurance. Is that health insurance?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm assuming you're gonna talk about all other insurance in the budget presentation.
Well, we can. We talked
No, I saw you
about,
had- I'm just saying
we
that, but
included,
that only relates to health insurance was my
it
question.
does, it does.
Okay, and
Yes.
then on the STD stuff, I know.
Short-term
Short-term
disability?
I know. On the STD stuff, let's not, okay, on the short-term disability, are we buying that insurance?
Yes, we would be getting that through carrier. We looked at that last year, and we obtained quotes for it, but we didn't go forward with it. But we thought that, because this is a benefit that employees don't currently have, and it would be something I think that would be beneficial to add to our package.
Okay, and is that embedded in the 100,000 that you used?
It is.
Okay, and then when I'm going through the numbers that you had for the other areas, when you said Onslow's looking at 1 to 2, Holly Ridge 5 to 6, everybody else, I think the thing that's a little bit misleading in there, because I think the first blush on something like that was that we're being more generous. The reality is we didn't do the same kind of increases that these places did last year. Onslow did 10% across the board. We did not. Okay, I don't know what Holly Ridge is in line with what you're talking about, and also the bumps that they've done. I like your approach of you're going across the board, and the COLA everybody gets, but the merit is dependent on performance.
Yes, that's
Okay.
based strictly on performance.
Right, okay, so I do think that's in line with what we're seeing, and particularly, I forwarded you an article about, basically the loss of income from people, so.
Yeah.
All right, I just want to make sure it isn't, the short-term disability is embedded in the cost.
It is.
100,000 is basically salary, insurance, et cetera.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And I will say, I know that some of the other towns that Alice has been working with had some additional increases and things this past year, but that's because they were already lower than where we were. And the thing that we can't do is get into this catch-22, well, Surf City gave $1, now we need to we're just competing with ourselves. We have to be comfortable with all of the benefits and the offerings that we have. And if we end up having an issue hiring or retaining staff, our department heads are not quiet, and I'm sure we're going to hear about it.
Well, and I feel too that what we have proposed is sustainable for North Topsail Beach.
That's what we have to focus on.
A comment.
Yes, sir.
I like how it was done. We've had some discussions. It was measured, it was controlled, it was well thought through. Without going into detail, knowing just from living on this island, and it's a small island with only 3 towns, some of what's been done in other places is probably not worthy of comparison by virtue of how it was done. It was very knee-jerk. It was not reasoned out. It was not thought through, and it was not a planned, controlled approach that they have provided to this board.
And I will say it also, in a lot of cases, did not solve the issue that they were trying to solve. So Onslow County did a large increase last year, 10% across the board. They still have a ton of job openings. So I am one who believes that money is a portion of what you have to offer an employee, but it's not the total package. And you can't just keep throwing money at it. It's not going to solve if there's an underlying problem.
And as the department heads explained at the last meeting too, it's about training. We put a lot into training employees, and again, it's about the entire package and the work environment.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm what Alice said. I spoke with a department head from Onslow County, and he told me they were told no more than 2% increase. If they have an employee that thinks is eligible for more than 2%, they have to have a justification and a whole good backing in why that person needs to get more than 2%. So they were strictly 2% max on their salaries.
Okay, and so Alderman Grant, you go ahead with your last question, but then we're still on slide 1, people. So we're gonna keep going.
I was just gonna pair what Tom said, and that is we have to take care of our people. And I think that putting that in there, given what's been going on with inflation and stuff, and also the slide that you put together that shows the impact over 5 years in the forecast, makes me comfortable with what you're talking about.
Okay, next slide, Ricky, please. Okay, the next slide is regarding the American Rescue Plan. The town received American Rescue funds in 2 tranches, August of 2021 and July of 2022, in the amount of $236,792.20. To date, we expended, as if you recall, when we were buttoning up town hall renovations, we had to pivot and figure out a plan for the IT equipment in the boardroom, which was not budgeted. So we were able to use the funding of $36,408.78 for the boardroom technology. So that's what we have expended to date out of that fund. It must be obligated by December 31st, 2024, and spent by December 31st, 2026. We've been, Caitlin has been tracking down what we can spend the money on and what we cannot. We vetted a lot of different options in this. We thought about borrowing, using it for debt service, knowing that we have a fire station coming up, knowing that we have the fire truck, knowing that we have potential and need for EOC and additional property. So our recommendation at this point for the board to consider is using the remaining funds, the $200,383.42, allocating that to offset personnel costs in this budget, which will essentially be a wash. It'll be an in and out of the general fund, and then therefore freeing up that money that the board can use for other purposes for capital needs, whether it be the fire station toward the debt service, whether it be towards paying more on the fire truck or having additional funds for purchase of land for EOC. So any capital items, that would be my recommendation at this point.
And I think that goes in line with how some of the other municipalities are using the rescue funds.
And it's a very safe way to use them. I mean, some people are being a little creative, which I don't choose to do. I think this would be based on what we know that our capital needs are going to be, I think it just gives the board more freedom to be able to decide what maybe to put more money toward.
Just a quick question to follow up on what the mayor said. Why not just put it in a contingency fund?
And you could do that.
And then you've got the ability for the board to apply it where you think it's needed.
But again, it's really the same. It's an in and out. It's going to be a wash. So putting it towards personnel costs, we feel is the recommended route.
I'm sorry, I meant the money that you're taking out of personnel. I'm 100% with you on the personnel side. I'm talking about you'll be having $200,000 less in personnel cost.
Right.
I'm saying what I'm concerned about is it'll make the budget look like this in terms of personnel, and so the next time it would come in, I'd rather have it be flat in personnel costs.
And you can use it in contingency
going forward.
Well, I'm not sure that it matters whether it sits in the general fund or is in contingency line item. So it's all.
That's not my point. My point's a very simple one. We're looking at giving basically a 5 or 6% increase.
Right.
Okay? If you were to basically say, I'm going to reduce my payroll costs by $200,000 in this next fiscal year, you're gonna see a drop in what looks like the budget, and then the following year, you're gonna have the 5% increase plus the 200,000 coming in. I'm talking about just the way it looks.
And you put a little asterisk there that explains why it looks the way it looks.
Well, let me do this. Caitlin,
Right.
do you see any issue with how it's gonna look from a budget forecasting and actual perspective?
I do not. It's going to be coming, we'll be transferring out of, we have all of those funds in Fund 15. If you remember, we created that fund, all of those monies live there. So we'll have a transfer of those funds into the general fund, and it'll essentially be a revenue. And then we'll have an expense going out of the general fund into capital improvement fund per the suggestion.
So you're not gonna show it as a cost, a reduction in cost, all you're gonna show it as a revenue in the general fund.
Correct,
I'm
yeah,
there,
revenue
that's
and
fine.
expense
That's
out,
fine.
so
That's
it'll
all.
just
I'm
be a
looking at
wash.
Well,
the optics.
What
It's
I'm
gonna be a
hearing
re-
without,
A revenue and an
Right.
expense, so a wash.
what I'm hearing you say without saying is that there's restrictions on that money for what it can and can't be used.
Correct.
So we use it for something that specifically can be used, but it frees up other funds of ours that we were going to use for that anyway, because that money we have flexibility over how we spend. Okay?
But they've
That's
got it
correct.
coded as personnel costs to make sure it complies with this.
I think we're getting into the weeds too much, so let's just, yeah, let's keep moving.
So do we have a consensus on the board is comfortable with that?
Yes.
To proceed?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Ricky, next slide, please. Okay, general fund summary. Projections provided at the last budget meeting along with the proposed employee package reflected a $672,888.45 surplus in the general fund. So that's what you're looking at right now that would, that shows us to the positive. So we're not looking to, this proposed budget does not reflect any need for an increase of taxes of any kind. It shows that we have a surplus that would go into contingency, or if the board decides that there's other initiatives that they want to take on, and yes, exactly, a hurricane can always change our finances in a blink of an eye, so it's important to continue to build up contingency and fund balance. So these, we went through these a little bit last meeting, and I can go through and highlight again just some of as a reminder on some of the differences. Administration, the change in percentage reflects where we pulled all IT-related expenses and pulled those into its own department, so that's why you're looking at IT showing 100% and then admin showing a little smaller percent. Inspections last year, again, last fiscal year, this fiscal year, we were set to embark on a lengthy list of condemnations. And again, due to market conditions and Ralph's due diligence, we were able to not have to go down that road. So this year in this proposed budget, we have slated for 2 properties that were identified if we need to go down that road with condemnation. So that was reduced to 2. Public buildings, we made a significant investment into the North End Fire Station repairs. And again, we're working through that now. And we have $150,000 embedded in this budget for next fiscal year as well. Public Works, we made a significant investment for new equipment last fiscal year. There was a large need in Public Works for equipment that was failing and needed to be replaced as a matter of safety. Public Streets, we purchased a street sweeper last fiscal year to improve maintenance conditions. So that's why you see a decrease in that line item. So one street sweeper is sufficient. We do not need anything else in that line item. The fire department, again, we had budgeted for a cascade system that we had applied for grants for that we did not get, but we did, like as I mentioned last time, we received $78,000 for other PPE equipment and so forth. We're going to continue over the next couple years while the station's being built to apply for grants. So you may see the cascade system go back into the budget, but not for this fiscal year. It would be for a future fiscal year. Recreation, We're looking to continue renovations in Richard Peters Park next fiscal year with the docks and the boardwalks. As you know, this fiscal year, we put a significant investment into the facilities with replacing the roof, the ramps, stairways, and the restroom facilities are being completely rehauled. Any questions on the summary?
Oh, let's keep-
Just one quick question. I'm not seeing, which is good, the only change in personnel is you're gonna be adding the one person in planning.
Correct.
But
We're
the police
adding,
and fire are static, and we're okay with those.
yes, yes. I will bring up with the fire department, the chief is still working on the restructuring that I talked about at the last budget meeting. So to provide opportunities for advancement within the department, we're changing positions and adding master firefighter and level 1 and level 2. And again, those numbers are all embedded into this proposed budget.
Okay, I think we're good to move on.
Okay. Ricky, next slide, please. Okay, so capital assets within the general fund, we've got, that we talked about, we went over these last time. We'll be focusing on the North End Fire Station, $150,000 into that. We'll be focusing more on the exterior, on the shell, getting that up to par. Public Works, F-450 dump truck for $64,000. Public Works again, an enclosed trailer and a mower, and one police department vehicle and one fire department vehicle. And that would be for staff, not a fire engine, but a vehicle. Okay, so at last, Ricky, next slide. So follow-up items from the last meeting. We talked about, for the general fund, we talked about special events. There was discussion. We allocated $7,000 for the Christmas tree, as we discussed at the last meeting. $2,500 is allocated for the chamber and $3,000 for other special events. That is what we have plugged into these numbers right now. So if there's any amendments that you would like to make, now's the time, so.
I'm gonna go back to my concern with 3,000 going to the chamber. I'm not saying that we shouldn't give anything to the chamber, but we are not getting $3,000 a year back from the chamber. Even when it came to the concert, we were hopeful that we'd be able to utilize them for ticket sales and other things, but you guys ended up having to do that yourselves. Even getting the advertising for the concert, I called multiple times, you called multiple times. So it would be my recommendation to reduce that down to either 500 or 1,000. And I don't know if the board has any additional comments on that. I know Connie's comments previously was that it's important to provide some support for the chamber. I don't disagree with that. I'm not trying to eliminate it all the way, but, you know, we could use those funds.
I support the sentiment, but I'd leave the 3,000 in there and not make it specific for the chamber. If there's
Well, I
something
don't
else you
believe
wanna
the
add.
other towns are giving 3,000.
No, you're missing my point. It's a placeholder for there, not for the chamber, but for memberships in different
No,
organizations.
we actually do write a check to the chamber. We pay the chamber, so.
He's talking about a line in the budget just to leave some money in there, and then we'll write the check as we see fit down the road.
That's my point.
I'm not comfortable with it saying the chamber, though. If we want to leave that
Alright.
$3,000 just in the Parks and Rec, I'm
That's
good
all-
with
that's
it
all I'm
being
saying. Yeah,
there.
that's all I'm
Name it
saying.
something else then.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Just for clarification too, we do have, the chamber money sits in the governing body department under a line item that says donations to other agencies. So it is an internal earmark. that
Okay,
we
so it's
say-
not a line item
Yeah, and it's
specific.
2,500 that we have allocated currently, $3,000 for special events. So 2,500 is the figure.
Do
in
they
there.
both sit in the same line item?
They do not.
So then what I would propose is that some of that come out and go into special events.
To beef up special events
Yes,
and
ma'am.
decrease the chamber.
That's what I would like to propose.
Well, you could leave it where it is. We can always move it with a budget amendment later, right?
That's correct.
Okay,
I mean, I get where you're going, but at the same time, it's a placeholder for, it's a piggy bank is all it is. You're putting the quarters in that piggy bank, and later on, you can decide what you can do with it.
So before any check is written for those donations in that line item, does that come before the board for approval?
It does not, but
See.
we can.
That's my point, is
Mm.
that if it's
But
in
it
there,
can. But you just said it can, Joanne.
right, and I'm okay if we change that process and the board get to vote on how much is going out. Just like we do with the byways
Yeah,
and the other
I
conferences.
share your sentiments with the chamber. I've never thought that we've gotten a fair shake with return on investment there. So I share your sentiments. It's not that. I just think we're kind of clogging the arteries here with this in terms of process.
I'm okay with leaving it where it is if we as a board are able to discuss that prior to the actual donation being made.
They typically send out their invoices in July for the next fiscal year, so when that comes to us, I'll put it on that following board meeting. So do you want to leave special events then at 3,000, or are we increasing that by any dollar amount? I know we have $7,000 allotted for a Christmas tree extension, and then $3,000 was the figure I gathered from the last conversation, so I just want to make sure that I'm
I
clear.
think that that's fine. In my conversations with Connie, we wanted to try and do some type of special events, but we didn't have anything expensive targeted to do.
Right.
So I believe that that would be okay.
Okay.
Just a quick question, and Mayor, you probably know this better than I do. We're gonna have to have a contingency fund. Going back to Tom's earlier point, you can do a budget amendment any time to say, I wanna do another special event for $5,000 and it comes out of the contingency fund, right?
You can, but I would not ever want to say that we want to dip into a contingency fund for a
No,
special
I'm just
event.
talking, right, I'm just talking, but I think in terms of special events and stuff like that, my feeling is we ought to try to do more things, maybe not as big as we tried last time, but try to do more things.
And that's fine, so if that's the case, then if you kick it up,
But I don't think that,
so it's embedded in the budget.
I don't think that, Connie, we were talking about having $3,000 right now in our special events fund. And I'm thinking that that is okay for this year, because in talking with you, we would like to do things, but we didn't have anything expensive targeted. You know, so what are your thoughts on that?
You're exactly right. What you and I had talked about, some events that might actually make a little money or just don't cost anything, that provide a service for our residents and visitors, the $3,000 is fine.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next thing, item is more of a capital item, but it still is I put it under follow-up. It's the pending MOU for bike lanes. This item is on the Board of Aldermen's agenda for the next meeting. So, but it was requested that we talk about it in a budget workshop to see how you may or may not fit in and how you want to proceed with
I mean,
it.
you're gonna handle this, but my take is put it as a placeholder in the budget, then we're having a meeting next, to go forward with it or not, right?
You're talking about the bike lane?
The $100,000.
Yeah, for towards that.
placeholder,
because we're gonna
be meeting on it next week.
So my recommendation after seeing what came back is that I still personally would like to budget for it, and as you said, Mr. Grant, talk about it in the next meeting. I do also agree with Alderman Leonard. It wasn't very detailed out exactly where those 100,000 are going. So we have some work to do on the MOU, but I do believe that we would like to do something, because I had concerns when the Topsail Island Shoreline Protection Commission was wanting to do the roadway cleanup, and my concern, Mayor Pro Tem, was not that it's not a good idea, but I personally don't want people walking on New River Inlet Road. We don't have any sidewalks. We don't have any place for them to get off of the road. So it's just an ongoing concern that I think we all share.
Yeah, I'm not real sure how much more specific they're gonna give you than $100,000 for design. I mean, they've got, a roadway design staff, and, I don't know what specifically you would want. That's pretty much their labor. Either they do it internally, or a lot of times they do it contractually with another outside agency to do the design. I don't know how much more.
I think we can flush that out. I think our attorney's gonna want some details in there. I think Ms. Darian will too. So, for example, how much is allocated potentially to the roadwork design? How much is going to all of the CAMA items.
Well, here's the thing. Reading what they gave you in the context of all the previous emails that you know, reading bottom up, you pinged them back because you wanted an answer, and you hadn't gotten one. And then they almost immediately respond with 100K. And that's exactly what I think happened. Somebody just answered the mail to answer the mail, and it wasn't thought through, and there was zero detail in it when you get down to it. And I expected a little bit more of how the 100K adds up to 100K. And it's funny that it adds up to 100K, period, not 101 or 195, and it's just, it was a swag, was what they gave us. They gave us a swag.
And I don't disagree with that. I don't know how much more specific
So
they're
here's,
gonna
but here's a,
give.
so Fred, here would be a good example. Say CAMA shuts it down after the initial thing is submitted. And then they also, so how much is in that 100,000 to continue to go through the CAMA appeal process versus the design of the roadwork? That would be a good example of what I don't want you to come back later and say we're out of man hours and we still have to go through the appeal process of CAMA.
Well, and just one other thing, Fred, to follow up on what the mayor said is, you got the hard and soft issue that we had, we were talking about the Army Corps project. Like, is this overheads, all that kind of stuff. But the other thing that's important to me is, who owns the permits? Right? I mean, it's one thing to go through the process and they decide they're not gonna do it for 5 years, but then we ought to own the permits, right? If we're paying, those are just details that work out, but I think in our next meeting, that's the stuff we're gonna flush out with Tom's comments too.
So I think for the point of this meeting is I'd like to just see if there's consensus to include it in the budget, and then we can flush
Yes.
out the details.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I would wait for, I assume Brian's gonna have a whole list of items that he's gonna want them to address. But I don't want the opportunity to budget the 100,000 pass, because I think it's, for 5 miles of roadway, I think it's a good deal, and the 1.2 million, I did notice that they stretched it out an additional year, the calendar year 27. I just think that's a real good bargain compared to some other previous prices, and if we really want to build bike lane, this is the opportunity.
And we
Everybody
have,
agrees with you.
yeah, we have consensus to include it, so I think we can move on.
So we're including this as $100,000 for, in the capital. It's a capital line item.
So that does not have to be paid this fiscal year.
This current year? I doubt it.
Does that need to be paid before June 30th?
We're a couple of months away.
Okay.
Well, we would need to know for certain, because we need to know whether it gets,
An
it would be,
amendment.
we have to find the money this fiscal year, or we need to allocate it next fiscal year.
We can find that out for the meeting, because it's on the agenda, so if we could just find that out, Fred, that would be good.
To me,
Yeah, I think we'll wait to, when Brian prepares something, we can ask him that. But the other concern is, of the 1.2 million, do we want to budget any of that in contingency? Because I don't think we're going to want to budget 1.2 million all in one lump sum in the year 2027.
You're talking about for the ongoing project. I
Setting
think,
aside
We should
money.
talk about that. I think we should talk about that in the May meeting.
I agree.
yeah, I'm fine with that, because I don't know, it may be a few years down, and we still don't even know how far they'll be able to get with CAMA. You know, we may be able to go 2 miles, we may be able to go 4, I don't know.
But to her point is, Mayor,
Not to share.
I think what she's saying is the consensus is, put it in next year's budget, and we'll discuss
Yes.
when the timing is at the next meeting.
Yes,
So keep it in next year's budget.
Yes.
Let's not worry about it for this year so
Yes.
far. That's what you're looking for, right?
That's fine.
anything else on the capital improvement summary from the board?
And Brian does have a copy of the proposed agreement that he was provided for review prior to the next board meeting.
Excellent.
Anything further on that? Okay. Okay, next I'll turn it over to Caitlin just to go through the capital improvements fund summary.
So like the general fund, this is assuming the current tax rate of 43 cents, and with the increased levy that was given by the county. That is the increase of revenues. And if you remember last year, we allocated certain pennies towards the fire department, fire truck, and then the future improvements, which is that breakdown there. So with the new value of a penny being, I think it's a little over $160,000, that changes those figures there. These are subject to change, and based on that conversation we just had, we can obviously change that going forward for next year, but this is just from what we had last year and those new figures. Next slide, please, Ricky.
Before you leave
Oh.
that, just real quick.
Yes.
I know you've got it in some of the other slides. The assumption for all the new buildings that's going on is we're just taking what the county gave us in the last thing, and that's where the pennies fall out. We're not trying to forecast we're gonna have $1 million, $5 million worth of building in the next year. We're just assuming with the numbers they gave us are the numbers we're using.
Yes. The numbers they gave us are the numbers we're using. This is also assuming the 95% collection rate. If you recall, we talked about that last time. And in terms of the figures you see for fire department and fire truck, it's essentially like our savings for those items. We don't have those numbers yet.
My point is it's conservative.
Correct. Yes, it is a conservative approach. Yep. So the next slide is the capital asset spreadsheet. Last year, we composed this with the help of all of the department heads. We have reviewed it. I was going to say beefed it up, but we reviewed it this fiscal year and updated it as we saw fit. It is a high-level view of needs that we have for the town, and it's not exact. We're not going to be spending the full $6 million on the Southland Fire Station. We're not paying that this year, but it is a high-level view of the different projects and needs that we have for vehicles, any type of capital asset need. Going over the general fund, you'll see that we encompass some of these within the general fund, and we're able to cash flow those items, which lessens our debt exposure and then allows us to take on more for the bigger type projects that we have. Any questions on this?
I do.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's more of just a statement. I'm not sure, Alice, we've talked about this too, but maybe I'm missing it. I don't see EOC up here, and it's
It's in the green section.
it's in the green. I
Offsite
see it.
EOC
I see
stores.
it now. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure it was on there.
Yes.
Thank you.
Just real quick before you leave there, you and I talked about this before. This is, the fire station will be financed and everything else. Has Carter given us any idea on use of with all the capital projects on the beach projects we've got on a cash side? I'm assuming we're fine because of the SOBs and stuff we've got in, correct?
Right, yeah.
You feel pretty good about that,
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes, yeah. All of that was vetted out before we even got into the SOBs in terms of where those revenue sources were coming. So yes, yes. So then the next slide, we presented this last year as well, the cost and revenue analysis. We updated this. It is, again, high-level view, but gives you somewhat of an idea of base costs coming down the line and base revenues that are coming down the line. We assumed very flat rate things here. There's no interest that's built into the fire department or the fire truck. It's just flat assumptions in terms of the different revenues and also some of the operations and maintenance line items. We assumed anywhere from a 1% to a 5% increase, which is conservative. And we have updated the current ad valorem rates based on the figures that you've seen previously in the other slides. So between both departments, you can see there in the red that it's going to generate a surplus for those items, which is good for the town. That is going to help us with future projects. That is going to help us with fund balances. And again, this is high level, so if you're going to try to tie this to the actual budget, you will fail. So this is just high level view. It does not exactly tie up. So any questions?
Yeah, what inflation rate do you assume at 5%? I'm looking at the top line. I'm just looking at percent. It looks like about 5%.
I think we did do 5%.
Okay,
Yes,
that's fine.
5% for that.
I'm glad, because the forecast is very good, I think, for our purposes to show what that looks like. Because if you flatlined everything on the expense side, it would not be a fair representation.
Right.
But I think you're doing a good job, and thank you.
Yes. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. So the next slide, we have our Shoreline Protection Fund summary. You saw this. Again, the previous workshop, this has not changed from the last time you saw it. All the changes or noteworthy changes that we went over previously were all encompassed in the general fund. And so these figures are the same. To balance all of the different funds that you see, the differences that are being shown in the red there would be added to that fund's contingency to balance those. Any questions on Fund 30? Okay. Yes.
Can you expand on the future projects fund?
Yeah, so here we have, for the beach fund in general, we have a lot of different items that are built into that, which you guys are aware of, but just for the record, we have that Vitex, we have our lobbyist built in here, any type of beach meetings or conferences that are attended or sponsored live in the beach fund. Dune or crosswalk maintenance and repair lives here. The Sea Oats program, the New River EIS project,
All the above.
our SOB project, yes, got a lot going on in the beach fund. And then the future project aspect is essentially the contingency for Fund 30 for future type beach projects that we'll be looking at. This also, I didn't mention, was the 30-year beach plan. We also have that slated and carried out for the next foreseeable future for beach
Only
engineering.
thing I'll say about the Fund 30 is we had a very optimistic discussion yesterday with in the BISAC meeting, and we are planning on multiplying the town funds 2 to 3-fold from what our actual available funding is. In the future projects, that's our approach. Rather than paying 100% of the cost of each projects, we are planning on multiplying that number 2 to 3 times.
Well, and the other thing that was part of that meeting yesterday was, what he's talking about is leveraging stuff, Tom, so that some of the stuff that Chris brought up was there's a 3-to-1 match in funds that are stuff out there. But one of the things that Mike and I made clear in the meeting yesterday is we've got a lot of stuff on our plate for the next couple of years. So don't be looking, if something comes up and we can take advantage of something free or whatever, that's one thing. But when you look at the next couple of years, the firehouse, the beach projects and everything else, we're not anticipating huge dollars being spent within that time frame.
I also noted too that the timeline that was presented was aggressive. So when that timeline does come out, you just need to be aware that if it does say next fiscal year, that does not mean that we can financially do that next fiscal year, because obviously we've got the SOBs and everything that has to be taken care of first.
Well, and the only thing I would say as it relates to the beach fund is we have significant erosion issues down there in Phase 2, and we currently do not have a plan to address those in front of like Regis, Dunes, and Dolphin Shores. So
Chris is working on that.
I understand, I'm just saying that we do have an issue. So if there's a way to obtain funds or grants or anything that would help us help them, that'd be good.
And that's the focus actually, 2 and 3.
And we have, after this fiscal year that we're looking at for next year, we have 3 more years of that SOB payment, which would pay off the old USDA loan. So once that's gone, you'll have, that's $2 million currently per fiscal year that we're spending towards this payment. So once that's gone, you'll have an increase, which will be nice to have that to play with. Other than that, we have the remaining, I do not foresee us needing part 2 tomorrow, but if so, we can meet tomorrow. And then we have our workshop 3 and then the hearing on May 10th, and then the adoption on June 7th, which is the normal board meeting in June. Yes, sir.
So, came out in conversation before we convened that 2 of us are not going to be present at the June 7th meeting to adopt the budget. So what my recommendation would be is that we consider holding a special meeting later on in the month of June, like a week later. I will be back on the 11th. So we could do it we could do it the 14th and just hold a special meeting to do that. And I hate to drop this on you like this, Alice. I should have mentioned it to you ahead of time. I didn't know Rick was also gonna be out, but I'm on a cruise, and,
I'm okay on the 14th if we have
I am as well.
unless we just want to postpone the board meeting to the 14th and do the whole thing, and I don't know what mechanics are required in order to do that, because it's on our schedule.
I
Okay,
would prefer not to do that.
okay.
So you're looking at the 14th? Okay.
Thanks, Tom.
So we're gonna have a meeting on June 7th, which will probably be very light, and then June 14th.
Well, we would not, what we're saying is possibly push the June 7th meeting to June 14th.
Well, the June 7th is the normal board meeting
Oh,
day.
that's the normal
So
board
you'll
meeting.
still have that meeting
Okay.
and then a separate special
Okay,
meeting for
I'm
the
sorry,
adoption.
thank you.
Yes.
I was thinking that was the second week in June.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Excellent job.
Okay, I think we're done other than that. Thank
Yeah,
you,
that was
guys.
an excellent job. Thank you.
I said this before to you. I can't believe how far and how fast this has come. You did an excellent job, Caitlin and Alice. Thank you very much.
So do I don't need a motion to adjourn the work session, do I? Yeah? Do I have a motion to adjourn? Second?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Olivia.